All right, 1 minute warning.
It's in.
All right, the clock says 1 o'clock. I will welcome everybody to the Sun River Service District Managing Board for 1 p.m. Thursday, June 19th, 2025. As always, after the call to order, we start with a pledge of allegiance, and so everybody stand for that. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We can also recognize that this is a federal holiday. Thank everybody for attending, but happy Juneteenth to everybody. And I will then start with the roll call. Director Kelly. Here. Director Ralston. Here. Director Shoemaker.
Here.
Director Hepburn. Here. Ex officio Snyder. Here. And chair is present as well, so we have a quorum. We will start with public input. I see 2 public input. As a reminder, you have in the range of about 3 minutes for your public input. We do have the option of asking clarifying questions, but generally we do not engage in dialogue. But if necessary, we will follow up. The first person who signed in is Debbie Baker, and I will wait for everyone to hop up and speak.
It's printed out, it makes it easier. Thank you, Ria.
You haven't seen how bad my reading glasses are.
It's nice to be here, and hopefully the summer's going well for everybody. I'm here to comment on the agenda item of the COLA increase, which is scheduled for a 3% wage increase for non-represented employees. And as I understand it, the police union has also agreed to that amount. As you know, I've been a voice expressing concern for the future financial stability of the district, generally for the past 3 years. Your finance committee also expressed those concerns. I've had several community members come up to me and say the same thing. So this really is a partnership in trying to find solutions to continue in stability. As a reminder, the district revenue goes up 3% per year, about. I think you all know that. You just went through your budget process. The proposed increase of 3% may seem like a reasonable amount, but CPI for the last year was 2.3%, so you're over that. And last year, the wage increase granted was 7% per the collective bargaining agreement. CPI last year was less than 3%. So you may think that 3% wage increase is an even trade with a 3% revenue increase, but it's not. Healthcare went up 6%, PERS and workers' comp, what you have on the agenda today too. Both have significant increases and are based on wages. What I want to say to the fire union, and they're not here, but hopefully the message gets to them, is to please settle for a fair wage increase similar to the police. I believe they're a valued and appreciated asset in our community, and I want them to feel like they're partners in the stability of the district long term. So I also want to mention that I have extensive contract negotiation experience, so I understand the 3% increase with the police union may be the best result that you could have. It's not outrageous, but it still is the downward trend. So if you could pass that on to the fire union, Rod, my comments, that would be appreciated. The one other thing that I wanted to mention is the website. There's a section in there about how transparent the district is. I would encourage you to be more transparent, get your budget up there on that website, get your past minutes, approved minutes, not just draft minutes. That would be really helpful. I did hear comments about the reserve study, and I don't come to every one of your meetings, so I don't know what it turned out to be, but there were some concerns about reserving enough finances. So just encourage you to be a little more transparent.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. And we have a second speaker, and it's Gary, and what's your,
Westwell.
Westwell. Okay, Gary Westwell, take it away.
Thanks a lot. I'm here on behalf of all of my retired friends who moved here because it's such a great place. You guys do such a fabulous job, and man, look at this building. My past experience has been that everybody has an ability to drink responsibly, and the responsible number that I'm aware of is the breath alcohol content of 0.07 or below. In the case of my experience, I was pulled over improperly for improbable cause. The probable cause wasn't there. So as the incident escalated, it became aware to me that the officer was trying to take me for a drunk. And in the case of him not knowing anything about me or my personality or my wiring, I basically went along with it, even though I was in a hurry to go see my daughter at the Winterfest back on February 15th. I was pulled over by Officer Austin Wilson, who's known to be an escalator in the case of taking a probable cause and turning it into what would be a DUI, which is a very serious offense. Bottom line, I did all that I had to. I was asked to do field sobriety tests, to which there's a public recording of this. I can't get our chief of police to release it because it was excluded. I'm sorry, had an exemption pulled against it, which is also irrelevant. There is no exemption for public information like that. I was in it. I made the complaint and I was arrested are three reasons why you can't get an exemption. But to keep the story going, it turns out that I did the field sobriety tests. I didn't get to see any of this body cam because of the nature of my charge. I was going to defend myself since I was taken all the way to Bend in order to be processed. I had a 000. I'm now known as Trip Zip DUI guy. Since my 3 zeros would normally get me off, clean, like I said, I was not impaired to drive, even though the field sobriety test allegedly had shown me to be quite impaired. The 3 zeros, which is what the law comes down to, and I don't think I failed my tests either, but I haven't seen the body cam, which is very comedic because I'm sure it's funnier than serious. But the point is I was not impaired. These officers were. When I was told that I would have to go to get the BAC, I didn't think I'd have to go to Bend or I would have never done the field sobriety tests. They took me to Bend. I was processed. I blew 3 zeros. And after that, I was told I still have to do more tests. Everyone knows the implied consent when you get your driver's license at DMV, you have to take a test in order to be lawful. I took a test. The way it's worded is breath, comma, which separates words. It says blood, and then it uses the word or urine. That's not a trifecta of tests. That's a choice. My choice was given by Casey Mann. Casey Mann did not observe the fact that I did not do anything wrong by not taking this further test, this request. I could have volunteered for it, but I wasn't required to it. She insisted that I was required, I would be sentenced to a year's worth of suspended license. To which I told her, I don't think you're right. I think you're wrong. This is misconduct. We went along with it anyways. I was put in a holding cell. I was given the opportunity to go to the hospital and have a urine test. And I again refused that a second time. I said, there's a miscommunication. Somebody's not understanding. I think your officer is impaired. My bottom line is they let me go. They did not need to have that, but I was released with a suspended license and my real license had been taken away. Been told that it's going to be shredded. They have to buy a new one no matter what. Turns out 3 days later, Officer Van Meter confirmed that. But 3 days after that, Officer John Beck confirmed that my paperwork actually showed I did not fail a test, nor did I refuse a test. So I was not actually qualified to have a suspended license. Therefore, they gave me my license back. This is all very nerve-wracking. To me at my house with my wife, she's very, 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 very stubborn. And I now sleep in the doghouse in the garage because I have not been able to clear her conscience. Without that public information, my body cam of my field sobriety test, all the way to, and may I express, Casey Mann taking my wife aside at my front door and having a private conversation with her. Outside of my ability to be there, I think she failed at every level. And I just want to be on the record with it. I came and talked to Pete about it. Pete said, Gary, there's nothing I can do about your wife being not happy with you. And I'm not going to change that no matter what you do. You've been denied. You denied me public access that I would normally be given in the course of discovery. They dropped the case, but they held the urine against me. I was by default charged with failure to provide urine, which isn't even written up right. It's supposed to be refused urine. Failure to provide urine would be called shy bladder, one who can't produce under pressure. Long story short, I had to go back to the judge and ask her to appeal it. She said, no, here's your new court date. Then the VA went ahead and started thinking about it because of all the logistics, and lo and behold, they dropped the charges. I'm sorry, I probably need something to drink right now, and it's about 3 minutes. I would like you to release to me those body cams so I don't have to go over your head to the DA and appeal there too, or go to the AG and submit that these portions in our area are working against the public interest. I, for one, like to support Whiskey River, Wallows, and all our other libation servers, but I do it responsibly. And I feel like the cops around here are going to pull you over and escalate even a 0.01. Thank God I was 0.00. That's all I have to say. Sir, I would like to have that disclosed, and I would like you guys to pay for it. There's no redactions necessary because I am the one who got arrested. I am the one in it, and I'm the one who complained about it. And Mr. Wilson is now down in Bend, probably because of the complaints, or maybe it's because he wanted to transfer. Either way, our community feels better and safer without him. Casey Mann, still on patrol. I'm saying, watch out. She's got misconduct in her middle name. That's all I have to say. Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Thank you for your time, sir.
You guys are great.
All right, is there any additional public input? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have a pretty healthy consent agenda, including several minutes from April 4, April 17, April 18, May 15, and June 5. We were a little backed up on the meeting minutes, which might be one reason why they are not currently yet available up on the website. We also then have the SROA invoice in the amount of $6,935.28. Workers' compensation insurance invoice to the tune of slightly under $129,000. Slight misprint. I code and Coles fiscal 23 and fiscal 26 invoices. And this is the combined total of $28,000. And I'll have a question about that just for clarification. And then late ad was an Oregon Health Authority IGA payment expense, slightly over $33,000. So first of all, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as a whole?
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just want to clarify, it's the fiscal year 23-24.
No.
It's fiscal year 23. We were never billed for that fiscal year for
Okay.
polls and codes. They were pretty far behind on their billing. So we just received that bill in addition to the fiscal year 26 bill.
Okay. Thank you.
We had somewhere, and this was a little bit ago, we had gotten notice that 23 had not been billed. And then we were actually given a bill and then that bill was withdrawn. So I'm presuming that they've resolved all their finance issues and this is the last one that we're going to get.
I would hope so. The auditor called to confirm and we did our due diligence and research to verify that this has not been paid by the district for that year. And
Yeah. And I believe that's actually countywide or Coles wide. Nobody was issued a bill that year. So it's not just us.
I spoke to Under Sheriff Wells and to no fault of our own, this happened. And it was, again, as you stated, we were not the only jurisdiction where that occurred. And yes, all of these bills were handed out at the previous Coles meeting to all of the representatives there.
Okay. Additional discussion or questions? If not, I will call for the vote. Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Ralston?
Yep.
Director Shoemaker? Yep. Director Hepburn?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. All right, moving on to old business. We have a public safety building update. I will turn it over to PM Nelson and Director Ralston to lead us.
Great, thanks. Okay, we are still chasing a handful of items. Building, we're finishing some warranties items. Pending final pricing, the app bay being one. It's hopefully soon, within the next week, we should have everything in hand. I've been pushing. Let's see, we're still dealing with a handful of items with the SROA folks. We've got, we submitted another Form E to get some clarification and rulings on a couple of items. So we have some additional paint we have to do on the exterior of the building, and then we have to have a re-review. Is that what it's called?
Well, what we're doing is we've got to go in front of the design committee again next Friday. Because the color board originally submitted did not include the natural finish on the woodwork at the front entryway. So they have denied that. And so I've written out a big explanation of why it should be allowed. And have submitted that document along with verbiage backing up the also denied temporary bank stabilization methods that you want to do over at this bank that's been washing out. So that information's been submitted. They have the wrong information in the tube out front. I went to see Jackie before this meeting. She's at lunch. I'll go see her after this to make sure we get the right stuff in there. Anybody wants to come to the meeting next Friday is welcome, but only one additional board member could come. It would be great if fire could represent, to talk about that bank up there. We'll just see where it goes. Yes.
When's that meeting Friday?
Friday starts at 10 a.m., but they have an agenda that extends out, so they'll kind of give us an idea of when it'll be. If you want to come, that'd be great.
I may, and I don't count. Yeah,
You're right. It's good.
you do count, just not for.
If we wanted to put some sandbags at the top of the hill to keep the erosion down, and the community development said no. So I'm not too sure what they want.
They want it to wash out into the street, but
Some besides sandbags probably.
that way, like, if Doug can be there, he's going to try to be there to explain what happens when that goes out. But now there's another issue with that we'll talk about later.
And I'll let you know where my schedule is, but if I'm in town, I will attend.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, so again, the additional items that they're requesting are not in the Kirby Nagelhout scope of work. So what we'll be doing for the additional paint items is getting a third-party contractor to get those done for us. Let's see, we've completed some items. We've got our final furniture order. Your desk is now in place, Ron. And we have an invoicing for this month totaling $276,903.38. Most of that is the Kirby Nagelhout folks billing for that change order that was approved last month. And we're still holding $820,000 in retention, and some more scope work and final budget workout with Kirby has yet to happen. So we'll get that done before our next board meeting.
It's and the anticipation is they'll submit that in one lump sum, right?
If they get everything done.
That's true.
Yes. I mean, it's been trying to get them finished. They're obviously on other projects now, and as we all are, and I just need them to get out and focus and get it done.
All right, so that means we do need a motion to approve the funding request of $276,903.38.
So move.
Is there any further discussion? I will call for the vote. Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Ralston.
Yep.
Director Shoemaker,
Yes.
Director Hepburn.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. And then, Doug, more to say about that, or do you want to get on to item C, the final construction costs?
Oh, I'm good. 3BK, the sign, which was approved with a reduced
Mhm.
without the stone base. That won't be able to be installed given their schedule of till August 11th for the final installation. So you know, that's gonna be out there.
My parents' old anniversary.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really all I have. If there's any other questions on items, feel free to ask.
We do need to add a brief discussion of a recent pump test that occurred up there, where 1,000 gallons was dumped on that apron and it disappeared into a hole. It didn't come out. We need to find out what's going on with that. And in the meantime, can we ask that they stop doing that testing in that location and move it on?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
They got the new truck back, or the ladder truck came back, and they did a pump test up there and dumped 1,000 gallons, and it usually blows out that hillside, but it went down the hole and it didn't blow out the hillside, so
So we have a small lake somewhere underground.
we're not sure where that went.
Solves a lot of problems.
Just goes, if it just disappeared.
The building tips and fall out that direction.
Or a vehicle.
So anyway, that's what we found today. The update on that hillside. So hopefully we can get the sandbags approved and get that temporary stabilization on that hillside in place.
And they get the project taken care of to fix it.
Yep.
By next year.
Okay. So that was the funding request. So do we want to talk about item C, final construction costs? What was the topic there?
Well, it was mainly, I mean, C and D can kind of be combined. So
Okay.
we did an initial budget adjustment for that fund to the county a month or two ago because we'd received the final construction costs and it looked like we were being able to pay more in this fiscal year versus next fiscal year and get more completed. So we got that budget adjustment approved and entered. And then it looked like there were some overages that weren't anticipated. Is that correct, Doug? And that's why there needs to be another influx of funds due to the Kirby retainer.
Well, we received, well, we had additional at the end of the project. We had the change orders, which we approved last month, 300,000. Then we had another 50,000 in the DAS system upgrade that we had to do. And then we had 150 and change of FF&E overages as well.
So so the budget adjustment that we did was basically for cash flow purposes, because if Kirby did submit for their final payment, there was a potential that we would have gone over. Since Kirby did not submit for their final payment, we did the budget adjustment. We moved 500,000 into reserve, and we now have another 500,000 in reserve to work there. But that probably will require an updated budget for fiscal 26.
Correct.
And we can figure out with the county when they want to do that adjustment.
Well, just with a lot of those unknown pieces, that's why I recommended to the board to do a transfer, just because I don't want it to get to the end of fiscal year 25 and we've spent more than was budgeted. And so now we're not going to, it sounds like, do that, which is great. But then it changes the beginning net capital for the budget for next year, which we need to get updated with the county. So so as soon as you have kind of a breakdown of costs and maybe what month the things are going to be happening, I think that would be helpful.
I mean, just so you know, they did bill for half of their retainage this time and I rejected it because they're not done.
That was my next question. Thank you.
So anyway, so that $500,000 budget adjustment was at the county. What was that? Wednesday we did that. And it was approved. So we'll be moving out of 715 to 717 that money. I'll do that next week and book that to the budget, and then we'll be good for the audit for the fiscal year 25. And then for fiscal year 26, I'll see how things shake out this summer, and then we'll need to do an adjustment just with those changes.
And the county did, that same day, they approved all of the budgets, including the county budget. So our budget our fiscal 26 budget was approved. So that means now that it's approved, we can post that as well, right?
Post that to the website now too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Additional questions on item C or D? All right, we can do a brief update to the reserve study.
See item C and D above.
Yeah.
But again, we're on hold until we can get the final cost of the building determined. And then we need to put a placeholder in for what we think it's gonna cost to make the repairs to the bank up above. And then Mindy needs to do calculation of revenues coming in until 2032 and what we think we'll be able to put into the reserve study for that. So CERTA's on hold until we can get them that information.
Okay, that's fine. And I guess I should have asked, we had a couple OSHA fixes that we had to do, and I think those were done, correct?
They're in process. We have not finished the laundry sink and the eye wash in the extractor room.
Okay.
And we've still got the floor pending in the EMS decon room.
All right, thank you.
But we did get the lock fixed on the EMS medical room. That's done.
Did we make sure you could actually exit from the inside now?
Yes. Just need to turn the knob.
Even better. All right, we can move on to nominating committee update. I believe you are still in process on what's going on.
So we had the interviews, we have selected 4 new members of the SSD board. Some could be existing members, but we'll have to remain to see. All 4 are in background check right now. We're waiting for that to come back. We've also asked for background checks on any existing SSD members because they never had them done originally. So we want to just make everything clear and above board moving forward. So we're waiting on that. We have any idea, do you think, when we might have those wrapped
I
up?
spoke to him yesterday. He's hoping to be wrapped up by the end of within a week.
Then we'll send out a memo to the board
Yes.
and go from there.
Yeah.
And we're currently scheduled for the end of July with Deschutes County for approval.
Right.
Yeah, and then just as a reminder, the recommendation of the nominating committee goes to Deschutes County. We are informed in case we would like to have an opinion that we would also provide to Deschutes County, but Deschutes County is the ultimate decider on the nominations.
We had excellent candidates. It was very, very difficult to make the final call. Very difficult. And because of that, we're going to propose some changes to how we do things moving forward.
Okay.
But it was a good learning experience. We're going to get this thing dialed in pretty well.
And thanks to Randy for sitting on that too. It was great.
Yeah, big time.
His insight.
All right.
My other comment would be that people that are on the committee and the people that are currently on the board ready again, maybe shouldn't get a vote. So only maybe the director that, or directors that are not running or not on the nominating committee have more voice than the rest of you.
Yeah,
Right?
say that again. Say that again.
You already made your vote for who should be nominated. Those that aren't either on the nominating committee or not running don't have as much of a voice as those that are on the board that.
Well, but that's on purpose, actually. So we actually wanted to make sure, very similar to the way that the existing or that the SROA nominating committee works. They're the ones that make the decision to be able to move the voice forward out independent of the board. And so we wanted this nominating committee to be the same thing. So that's why it goes directly to the county.
Right.
If
The board just gets informed, doesn't get.
well, the board gets informed, and if for some reason there was an issue in the future where something got crosswise,
Yeah.
the board does have an opportunity to then they get notified and they have an opportunity to provide a memo to Deschutes County.
Perfect. I just want to this is a learning process for the SSD, this new nominating committee. I want to make sure that years down the road, we have it sorted out.
Jim and I talked about that one earlier.
Okay.
What I will say is the county typically, their response for anything like that is, why don't you kids figure it out and then come back to us when you've made a decision. So, but you know, we'll see where that goes. All right, additional questions on the nominations? All right, item 5, annual performance review discussion. I am in process on both of the reviews for Chief Booth and for Administrator Holiday. When I get those done, I anticipate maybe within the next week, I will send them to all of the board members for input. You know, obviously we can't generate a quorum, so please, if you've got feedback, send it back directly to me. And if there is a need to call an executive session, any of the board members can feel free to request that. And then last in old business, I just wanted to put this back on because we had talked about it before, and Chief Rassick has reminded me that this is a very sterile looking building. And so we wanted to discuss, I wanted to do a discussion rather than a solution on what do we want to do for art or improving the appearance of at least the public and the non-public areas of the public safety building. So recall, we did have a draft proposal in that needed a lot of work. That still is an option, but as I look at art, I think, or what we would want to do, similar to what other organizations or places do, we could pay for art that we would want to hang, and we could form a task force or a committee to go select and do that. So we could pay for it. We could solicit donations, which would require a separate task force or committee to decide what donations they would and would not want to accept, because obviously I think there's some things we would probably not display if donated to us. Or we could go back to the path of seeing if we could find somebody who would be willing to publicly curate it. So I'm just, because it's old business, I wanted to put it on there and just get an opinion. What's the sense of the board on the way that we would want to pursue this? Because I think things have settled down enough that we can probably put this back on the list to do.
I don't want to spend any money at this point, or most.
Oh, that's a clarifying question, but keep going.
I would go back to the original proposal that you had and try to get that to work.
I do think that, I thought there was some question, we needed to answer some questions in relation to that proposal though. And I think it needed to come from the county attorney about being able to, at the time, I believe you were volunteering to curate.
I was volunteering to, so what I should say is the gallery, of which I am a member, was offering to curate. And then if there was any interest in rotating art or other things, then the gallery would handle that. There is a potential that somebody could see artwork in here and could go to the gallery and could purchase it, which indirectly would come back to at least one of the board members. And we had gotten an understanding from the county that that was okay as long as I recused from the vote. And put in some safeguards, i.e. it can't be any of my art directly or anything like that. So we can, if you want, I can go back to our gallery board and I can have them draft a better version of an agreement that we could put in front. And again, we don't have to accept it. We can look at that as an option for study. The question I wanted to ask you, John, is you don't want to spend any money on art, and the implication on that would be we don't want to pay artist rate for art that we would put in. If we had somebody that was willing to provide us photographs, would we pay for the cost of printing framing to hang it? If that was all it was.
I'd say yeah for that.
Because, it's, we do not have any employees who, or at least not that I know of, that have any artistic skills, but we do have an employee spouse who is a professional photographer. I said to my knowledge. You see my crayons? So there could be people that would say, oh, I either have photos or I have something that I would donate. Again, we would have to figure out whether that's acceptable and that's what we would want to hang. And then the question would come in, would we pay for the cost of printing and framing for that? If it ever came to framing, I would frame it for free, but that's different.
Well, I'd be good with that. I just don't want to spend $10,000 for some pieces of work. You know, when we did Ben PD, we had 1% for art requirements. And so if you go to the Ben PD lobby, you'll see David walks large pieces up there. That was a requirement at the time. We did not have that requirement here, so we lack art here. It'd be good to be able to get it, but if at least possible costs, framing and mounting, sure. Or paying an artist for their work.
My concern, while having the gallery curated is certainly easy, but my concern is what if an artist who's not associated with the gallery wants to hang their art?
The gallery curates all art. So we curate for the Betty Gray Gallery at the Lodge, and we do not just use gallery artists. We take all comers.
So we just refer them back
Yeah.
to the
You
gallery.
just refer them to the gallery.
That would be my concern is, you know, someone who's not associated with it or whatever, it feels like that we'd be, you know, picking kind of winners and losers in the art world.
Yeah, the way that the process works, I'll just say the way it works at the Lodge is an artist occasionally will come to the Lodge and say, I see that you hang art here. Can I hang my art here? And they're sent to the gallery curation team. Wade Watson leads that. And Wade gets that card and then discusses it with the curation team on, is this something that we would want to do? Sure, we would do it. Let's work with the artist to hang it. So there's occasions where we say thank you, no, for either content or quality reasons. But for the most part, there is a process that the gallery has that it works where it will take outside artists. And in fact, for the most part, when we're hanging outside of the Artist Gallery Sun River, we like to hang outside artists. The curation team is there to enhance art, not necessarily sell art, or sell gallery art. That's why we come to the gallery.
I think I'm based on that discussion with that you basically recuse yourself from any participation
Yeah.
in any form other than being the chair. I don't have a problem, and especially if it comes down to that we have to put a little money forward for framing some art, potentially some photos. But I think, especially with Bill's concerned, and I agree with you,
Sure.
should not be promoting
Yeah.
one individual over another. But
Agree. I mean,
Everyone gets a fair chance of
Yeah.
hanging.
And with that clarity, I don't think there's a problem. You already received the go ahead from the county, so
yeah.
I think.
I will clarify everything and I will bring in a proposal for next month and we can discuss it. The one thing we might want to consider, and just let me ask a couple of people about it, is we might want to do a hanging system, which is usually a rail with some wires that hang down.
Just so we move them in and out.
Yeah, so they're easy to move in and out and you're not constantly requiring to patch holes as you move art from one place to the other. So but I can include that in the proposal in terms of what I think the cost of that is.
You could put a mural on the wall, the Three Sisters and Broken Top.
You can find a painter.
Keep your crayons out.
Yeah. Well, the next thing we can do is we're running tours, we can just have the kids color and we can, at least for the time being, tape those up to the walls. So, all right. We're in new business. Getting into monthly reports and thank you, Doug. Who was for in the round robin? It is Administrator Holiday that is up first for the reports.
Thank you, Chair. I put, I try to break it up and add photos if I can, so it's not so long. So I took a trip to Europe for 2 weeks with my aunt and it was lovely. And I'd be happy to do a slideshow, but I didn't think it was appropriate during a board meeting. So just let me know, but it was lovely. But you'll see my report is shorter than normal because I was gone for a while. Let's see, accounting, it's been busy, working with Deschutes County, getting our fiscal year 26 fee schedule approved. The budget adjustment, for 7/15 and 7/17, and then just getting the budget approved with the county. Also working with Doug on reconciling the public safety building project budget and actual expenses, and then doing the year-end financial projections, which we'll talk about when we get to that in the agenda. Human resources, we've actually been onboarding quite a few employees. We had bike patrol and we had a couple officers as well. And also working with both chiefs, mainly fire with labor contract negotiations. And then also working with our insurance agency, which we transferred to WHA a year ago now, I believe. And every year they put together a really great benefits resource guide. So updating that because our new plan starts July 1 and sending that information out to all employees so they understand the benefits the district provides. As far as operations, working with the nominating committee, just coordinating the interviews of the candidates and getting the proper documentation in place to start the background checks as part of that process. And then Chair Pfister and I and Chief Booth met with LaPointe Fire District Board and staff, which was great, and just looking at different ways we can collaborate and provide mutual support between the agencies. So I found that to be a very interesting meeting and helpful. And I think there's ways that we can help support each other a little bit. I know their administrative staff are going through a lot of the things that the district went through in the last 2 years. So happy to help support.
If I recall, there were three specific things that came out. One was kind of a discussion on the administrative side in terms of sharing knowledge, basic practices. The second was the discussion of a formal IGA rather than kind of a verbal agreement, and Chief Booth and Chief Halsey were going to take the lead on that. And then I took a third thing and I wrote it down, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
If the IJ is part of when the chiefs are acting here as for covering the district?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the IGA.
Yeah.
But then there was a third thing, shoot, I did write it down. It was fairly minor. It was mostly just making sure that, we were talking about, it was board practices. Because one of the questions that they had was on, emails and other access like that and why we were doing it. And so I was gonna get one-on-one with Robin to discuss that. I knew it was something. All right.
Their board brings snacks for the meeting. That was interesting.
Would you like to?
Snacks.
They actually do. They have a half hour before the meeting. They lay out a bunch of stuff, and then any of the working crew you have an opportunity to come down and mingle with the staff and or mingle with the board and do the rest.
I thought that was nice. That's a good idea.
Considering what the level of cooperation was, 5-6 years ago. Where it's evolved now, it's
Absolutely.
a great improvement, so. We need to thank the Lapine board for moving that evolution along.
Yes, definitely agree on that. And it was, I've been down to their boards a couple of times. I actually volunteered to help them do some vision and mission work and walk them through an exercise on that. And so I think it's a pretty healthy board right now. They've got a lot of experience and they've got a lot of enthusiasm, a good mix. And so it was a decent discussion. And I'll just say it was pretty wide ranging. We had to kind of, let's look at the what if guardrail on one side versus the other. Just to see what kind of faces were made in the room. I think it was pretty good all the way around. And Rod, I am sure, was the most excited non-participant because Bill gave him a pass right before he got in the truck to go down. All right, additional questions for Administrator Holliday? If not, we are to Sun River Fire. I will hand it to Chief Bjorvik.
Okay. First of all, apologize for you folks having to deal with me this morning instead of your professional fire chief, but he's off eloping with the OSFM Red team and sisters at the rodeo grounds doing his planning ops gig, helping them out. I was just trying to review what he put for information to review with you folks, so please bear with me. I'm not going to dwell on the emergency response update. You guys can read and see all that. I think just note they kind of caught up on call volume for May. It was pretty similar on numbers, and everything's kind of tracking, I think, the way it has been so far this year, just a little bit incrementally behind each month as far as call volume. One notable exception, if you look down in the lower right corner of the training hours, markedly less on that. You'll notice went from 387 to 265.5. That's essentially because we've gone through and cut a bunch of mandatory training out. You know, as an overtime savings measure to try to get that load in. So if you're curious about that, that's the mechanism there. Now, I'm not going to touch any of that unless you guys, someone has a question. Okay. As admin stuff, negotiations, I don't know, I guess if he wants to say full steam ahead, we'll go with that, but they're ongoing. I think they're closing in on a resolution one way or another, whether I don't believe probably that they'll just get it settled and agreed. I think you go to mediation and probably arbitration, but that's where that lies. I completed the accreditation review with DPSST and got that finalized and wrapped up and renewed. So we're good to go with our accreditation for another couple of years. But at the IMT Central Oregon Type 3 team workshop that they had here a couple of weeks ago, you went over some fire marshal's office protocols with them. Jim, you just talked about meeting with their board. Apparently he enjoyed a meeting with the Deschutes County Transportation Safety Advisory Committee. Sounded like that was a barn burner. I'm glad that he held that one out. I don't know anything about the OSFM Wildfire Staffing Committee, but apparently he does, so that's good. It sounds like a cheap thing to do. He went down and helped with an assessment center for, I believe, their training chief at Klamath County District 1. Sound like that went fairly well. Sound like he enjoyed that. And then I helped Crook County Fire and Rescue with a battalion chief assessment just prior to that. As far as operations go, we sent an engine to Houston Fire in Redmond, helped them during the initial attack period of that. We also sent an engine post this coming out to the Alder Springs Fire when they hit third alarm. We sent a crew up with the Type 3 engine. They were up there for several hours. They got home probably 3:30, 4 in the morning. But it sounds like they did some good work there. Kept at least a shop or garage type building from burning down. So that was a win. And then they were engaged with mop up and patrol for several hours. So that was a good deal. Water rescue training was completed here a couple days ago. It's kind of an annual big deal thing before floating season begins in earnest. The new SCBAs are in service. They're great. Thanks again to the board for approving that purchase and getting us out of the 20-year-old ones. Community events, we participated in Kids Day at the Village. We've had several station tours, and then one of the, at least one of, and I think the second one's called in their play for the donated fire engine ride station tour deal. And those sound like those were a big hit, and everybody likes them. I think one thing that he did not include, I'll give you a rosy update. I think board meeting before last, when Chief Booth was gone, I did provided the report for the meeting, and I included you the map of significant wildland fire potential through, I think, August or something. Just a bit of interesting, happy news, depending on how you look at it. September looks equally bad or worse than August does for as far as fire danger across Pacific Northwest and a bunch of the western states. So everything is colored bright red, and I don't anticipate with the predictions from the climate center that anything's gonna change that. They're still calling for hotter and drier than normal, so should be busy. But I am done unless someone has a question.
Questions for Chief Bjorvik? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I do. Yeah. So anecdotally, Rod, how do you see the fire season going so far in the sense of, comparative to last year? And you're more in tune with that than any of us.
We're ahead. of last year, and last year was crazy busy.
Calls, yeah, or fires.
Fires, yeah, and in larger fires already. We're 2 weeks ahead of last year. You know, last year there were a couple of little teasers that I thought, wow, that's pretty good, 7, 8 acre fires. And then we had the Darlene 3 right at the end of June, but we're already, we're weeks ahead, much larger fires than that. So, and it's basically the bigger stuff has been in the lighter fuel types, but the timber is like we're in now. That's getting ready to go. I mean, it's trying out pretty good. So, but we're ahead of last year as far as problems. So, I would imagine it'll just be another long and busy one.
Thank you.
Hopefully we have lots of rain this weekend. I'm going to a concert, I'll get rained on, but we need the rain.
I think we'd have to, the sobering thing on that is, I mean, once that rain shuts down, the primary driver of a fire starts you 1 hour fuels, right? The fine stuff, little stuff. Those things change. They go from bone dry to 100% saturated in an hour. So unless you really have a monsoonal rain event that changes the dynamics of your live fuel moistures, it just makes you feel good. Doesn't really change much for you. So hate to be so full of good news, but I'm a realist, right? You like to give me an idea. I don't without any fluff or filler to make you feel good. I just give it to you straight. Mr. Happy.
Great. We can move on to police report. Okay, or turn it over to Chief Rassick.
Good afternoon, everybody. The May report from your Sun River Police Department, starting with the calls for service, total of 606 calls for service, which is slightly down from this time last year. Of the 25 investigations that were taken during the month of May, 9 of them occurred outside of the boundaries of Sun River. There was a total of 22 calls for service in the Caldera and Crosswater areas. Of those 22, 17 of those were responded to by the Sun River Police Department. 5 of those actually in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department. I'm sorry, 4 of those with the Sheriff's Department and Sun River responding together. And I kind of broke down the types of calls that they responded to in those neighborhoods.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chief, but thank you. That's very helpful.
Yes,
By the way.
what we were talking about the other day, that's a lot.
The administrative updates, at the beginning of May, we met with the district administration and staff, and with a real focus on recruitment, especially lateral police officers. And we spent some time identifying some of the minimum requirements and highlighting how we were going to focus our recruitment efforts on some of the traditional job seeking websites and law enforcement websites, and really wanted to emphasize a campaign on social media. I believe all in all, we received a total of 6 applicants or applications from the lateral applicants, lateral officers, which I think was fantastic. During the month of May, there was a provisional offer that was made to Rob Piontek, who has since been hired. He's doing great. He is in training. On May the 9th, we had interviews for 2 lateral police officers. One of them, actually, they were both moved into backgrounds. One of them has since been disqualified. We have given a provisional offer to another lateral police officer. I anticipate that he will be brought on board hopefully July 1st. And if that is the case, short of the one frozen captain position, we will be fully staffed, which will be an enormous help for the summertime. An update on your bike patrol. During the month of May, all of the onboarding and the medical exams were completed. All of their training, the first aid CPRs, all of their acclimation, rules and regs was also completed. All 6 of your bike patrol officers are actually out now and are fully operational. And I would actually like to take a minute to give a little commendation for 2 of them. Bike patrol officers DeLuca and Kerr, who responded yesterday. We got a radio call of a person who had fallen off their bike and hit their head, believed they had a concussion over near the cove. And they were there. They were actually there, responded, got there even before the police officer did, and were able to initiate first aid. So special shout out to them. Also during the month of May, we were unanimously approved for our accreditation. Again, that's good for 3 years. I think that is a complete administrative update. Operations, there was really nothing reportable activity during the month of May. And your community events, the Kids Day in May was the big one. There was another one that I neglected to put on this list here, which was a job fair that was hosted over at the Shark with several, it seemed like at least a couple hundred middle school aged kids, that was attended by both the fire department and the police department, in addition to the Kids Day in May, and then some attendance up at the police officer memorial in Bend. And I think that concludes my update unless there are any questions.
Chief, on the responses into the Caldera crosswater area where both Sun River and Deschutes County responded, is Sun River dispatched with the county at the same time, or do they voluntarily go over, or how does that work when they're both there?
I'm sure that you are aware that we share a radio frequency with the sheriff's department. So as a call goes out, it will be based on availability. The dispatch center will make a determination. Certainly that is the jurisdiction of the Deschutes County Sheriff's Department. So it's likely that they would be dispatched first. However, if they are unavailable, they could reach out to Sun River. Upon hearing the radio call and their proximity, if for some reason an officer in Sun River appears to be or shows to be busy or occupied on the dispatch screen and isn't dispatched, but realize, hey, you know what, I'm closer, this is an emergency call, I can certainly get there faster than the sheriff's department, they may volunteer for that.
Okay, but you don't, there's no dual automatic dispatching with county and Sun River at the same time?
There could be a situation where that might happen if this was a critical event that would require the response of more than one police officer. I'm certain that could happen.
Okay.
Like a domestic requires the closest 2 usually, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the real answer is it depends.
It depends. I've always stated that there are very few occupations that are more dynamic than in police or fireworks. So yes, it depends.
For flexibility.
Right, additional questions for Chief Rassik? Thank you, Chief. We will move on to item 8, which is our Cedar Hall room policy. So the intent was to do a draft, and let's not sprain anybody's shoulder. It's less drafty than some of us were anticipating. So the policy is in front of you. It's item 8. We can just hit a couple of highlights on it. Currently, the plan is to offer Cedar Hall for use during normal business hours, Monday to Friday, 9 to 4. That's actually pretty common. In fact, Chief Booth had sent me I think it was Tualatin Valley room policy, and they were business hours only for all of their stations. So business hours only, at least to start, and then because there's a lot of things we need to figure out for after hours access, after hours security, all the rest. So it's just easier to do it business hours to start. And then you see the priority, district first, other government agencies or groups with broad public interest second, elected officials excluding campaign related activities third, designated not-for-profit 4, and public use by individuals, private groups, or community organizations last. So we've had that Obviously, there are some restrictions. We reached out not only to the DOJ, but to the Ethics Commission to get some rulings on what to do. So, no drugs, no alcohol, no subject of drugs or alcohol, no lascivious or lewd conduct, no gambling. Exceptions can be permitted with written permission. And the decision on there was, let's make it a board decision. Let's not throw it at, or at least the discussion point is, let's not throw it on the admin and make them the bad people. It can go to the board chair for a written exclusion, or if the board chair is unavailable, the board chair can provide another board designee that could make a decision on that. And then obviously, we have to reserve the right to bump anybody that would be coming in. If there's a STARS meeting that is in here and you need to bump it for a nearby fire so that we can turn this into an EOP or EOC, then yes, that's going to happen. And then reservations now are basically by phone in coordination with SROA. Randy, we made sure that you saw on there and parking spaces. And if there's a need for more than that, then that would have to be coordinated with the owners association.
I think that's a good way to put it, and it'll probably work.
Yeah, well, and that was what we discussed in the joint meeting, so I thought that worked fairly well. So, and obviously there's a little bit more in there, but any questions or comments or concerns?
Any consideration of a damage deposit? Because there was nothing about any kind of fee or, I was concerned, even groups with best intentions have a whoops on occasion.
So a cleaning deposit.
A cleaning deposit or something like that.
Would you want it blanket across the board, or would you want us to reserve the right to ask for one based on the activity?
I'd say reserve the right.
So right now we've got the reserving party is financially responsible for any damages. We could add a sentence there that says the district reserves the right to request a cleaning fee in advance.
Yeah.
But then the cancellations must be at least 24 hours in advance, or what?
The facility reserves the right to cancel reservations for policy violations or operational needs. So, somebody wants to come in and says, I want to reserve the room. They cancel and or don't show up, and then they come to reserve the room again. We're like, you didn't show up last time. We're not letting you do it this time.
Perfect. So my complaint with this whole thing is,
Complain.
well, you got it, my job. When we were going to the public about getting this building built, we said that this room would be open to the public. And it is designed so that it can be open to the public during off hours. Security is such that the lobby locks down to police and fire. The bathrooms are out there to be used. And that was done with intent. So that's my only gripe about this thing, is that we did say in those meetings to those people that it would be open.
Well, so we said it would be open to the public, and with an acknowledgement that we would need a policy. So I agree on that. I'm totally open long-term to having this open with more available hours. But as we started to look at the policy, and Mindy and Chief jump in as we go, there were some concerns that were expressed. So one, if it's a totally after hours thing, who's letting people in and out? So, we have somebody that doesn't really have the authority to let people in through a locked door, throwing open a locked door and letting people in. So we didn't have a really good idea as to how would we create a policy, or how would we create a procedure immediately to do that. So in the interest of getting it open, that's why we said business hours first, and then let's go figure out how we work that. The other question or concern that raised is, if there's a group of people in here, what happens if there's an emergency at the lobby? Somebody's coming in and they're severely injured, or somebody's getting chased by another person coming in, and you have a bunch of people in here with no real idea what to do other than, watch whatever unfold. And so until we had a better idea on how to do that, focus it on business hours where we have a little more control and a little more personnel around. And then figure out how we relax or change that as necessary. That's responding to the question. That's why we did it and that's why we're sticking it this way.
No, I get that. It's just what we said.
And I think you are still, in the way it's set up right now, as we go forward with the draft, making it policy, I think it's a good compromise because as you if you were to open this, let's say till 8 o'clock at night or whatever, you have all the servers in here for one thing.
There's $100,000 in AV equipment right there.
And that's a real problem for any public service agency right there.
Well, it's AOC too.
And the
Yeah.
potential emergency operations center. I think this is a good compromise and I think people can still access it for use. Anybody in the public, if they come and make the application and say, I want to use it.
Yeah. And we've had a couple business hours uses already by this, and I think they've mostly, or, in general, they've conformed to this. We have had at least one request for after hours access, and we've, which would require a separate waiver, anyway. And so far what we've said is, that, we don't have a good way on how to make that work. But, it's the foundation is asking for access. And so we're working with them to figure out how would we do it. And maybe that's a way that would change the policy. But for now, this is a draft policy, gives us the opportunity to say, okay, here is the policy. If you can abide by this, then yes, we can start allowing public access. And then as we get more used to the building and the things that we want to do, then yeah, I think what we can do is we can loosen it. I don't know that we have to tighten it beyond what we have. So I think we can start to be flexible once we realize what our options are.
I think it's easier to expand the policy
Yeah.
as opposed to contract it in the first place.
Just a thought, if somebody wanted to do after hours events, maybe they should have to pay overtime for somebody to come in and monitor.
That we did talk about that.
That'd be
and-
the best solution, the
Yeah.
logical solution, whether it be admin or police or fire, somebody to.
It would have to be basically a fee for overtime, because there's a limited number of people who have non-business hours access to the building. And, just as a comment, I know we all know, but it is being recorded. Board members are business hours only, access to the building. No,
Fire and admin side.
to the fire and admin side, yeah. There is no exception for holidays, by the way, because my code worked today, just so you know. And then CP has, I think you have slightly broader access hours.
6 in the morning till 9 at night.
7 days a week. But CP does not have the authority to bring in other people with them. And so, really the people that could say, yes, I will let you in through the locked door are limited to what, 5, 6 people? I mean, I guess technically, there's others that can escort people in, but it's a pretty limited amount. So yeah, if we were going to ask one of them to stay beyond business hours, that probably would require us to then say overtime. We just decided not to go there and just say business hours only at this point.
Going for now. Makes sense.
Suppose somebody wants to use the equipment for a presentation. How do we manage that?
I think the way we put it in is AV equipment must be requested in advance. No AV support is available beyond basic setup, and all setup and take, and then the last thing was all setup and takedown must occur within the reserved time. But basically, if it was, I want to be able to plug a computer into the screen, it's okay, we will make that available. We will make sure that the computer can plug in. And if you can't figure out how to run Windows on your own, as we say in the tech business, YOLMF, which is you're on your own, my friend. Sure. Other questions or comments? Like I said, this was originally proposed to be a draft and then we were gonna make changes and put it in, but right now we've got one sentence to change. So if we change that sentence, would we be comfortable?
To clarify, what was the sentence change?
So in the liability enforcement, the first line, the reserving party is financially responsible for any damages. The district reserves the right to collect a cleaning fee in advance.
So one question, I guess we don't really take a lot of money here or do any advancement like that with admin.
So we can still reserve the right. That doesn't necessarily.
Okay.
do it.
Great. So if people have public records requests, it's usually done by cash or check and, so we're very limited on how we do that. It's
Yeah.
not very often. So yet,
So that could be explained to them when they call and make the reservation.
Yeah.
Bring us a check.
All right. Great. Gosh. So again, we can make that correction and we can bring it back next month for ratification, or we actually did prepare a resolution. So if you're good with that change and you wanted to approve it this month, we have that ability.
Do you have anything about a fee use? Fee kind of?
Like I said, we reserve the right to do that and, yeah, similar thing, the district at its discretion may request a liability waiver. So we have the ability to say, okay, we want to see an insurance waiver for an event that you're running. It's in here, but I didn't necessarily verbally say it. The general use of the public facility is to not approve campaign events. So but let me clarify that. If somebody wanted to come in and say, I want to hold a campaign event here because I'm running for school board, the answer to that is no, our policy does not allow that. If somebody came in and said, I would like to hold a candidate forum for all school board members, we could approve that. Because it's a we want to make sure that we have assurances that it's nonpartisan, but there are nonpartisan operations, League of Women Voters, Connect Central Oregon, several others that have run nonpartisan political events or, political forums. We might allow that. In general, the first question that I would ask if I was around would be, well, why wouldn't you use the library or some other place? But at least that availability does exist. And then we'd have to decide in that case, would we if it was all 4 school board members were in here, would we let them set up a table with political material? The default answer is no, but we could write a waiver for that. All of that we can address as it comes. I think we've got some flexibility in the policy to address it. All right, anything else there? Are you good to approve it this month so that we can get it out, or do you want to wait for next month with the change?
I'm going to approve it this month with the caveat of the change.
Then there's the resolution that we would need a motion to approve.
I would move to approve resolution 2025-009, the Cedar Hall Conference Room Reservation Policy, with the caveat that there was a change made as discussed.
Yeah, with amended changes, yeah.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? If not, I will call for the vote. Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Ralston?
No, I have to stick with what I told the public.
Okay. Director Shoemaker?
Yes.
Director Hepburn?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. Sorry, John. You can work on amendments long-term. And certainly a lot of thanks to Administrator Holliday and Chief Boos, who did a ton of legwork in putting this together. So thank you too. All right. We're on to item 9, correct? Yes. Fiscal year 24-25 year-end budget versus actuals. I will turn it over to Administrator Holliday.
Thank you. So the first portion of your board book, there was just an overview. And so you'll see in Fund 715, it looks like we'll have a net surplus of just over $150,000. 716, the capital fund, it's just coming in even because we did do a budget adjustment due to some changing in pricing, so we had to accommodate that, so that comes in even. And then 717, you'll notice that there is a projected negative balance based on the numbers that I've received from Doug, but that does not include the most recent $500,000 adjustment. So that one is a little fluid just because, you know, there's some moving parts that we're working through.
And so I asked this question before and you said no, but I'm going to ask it again, just so that it's there. Because we're transferring the addition, or because we transferred the additional 500 into 717, wouldn't that then affect 715's year-end projection?
The year-end projection of net capital. However, though, if it's an approved debit from that, it's just, you know, added on top of any expense.
So the difference is still a net positive.
Yes.
But
The
it changes the capital.
Yes.
Okay.
It
That
changes
makes
the
sense.
Okay. So 9.A is the 715 account. And so what I did is just a snapshot on that front page that shows what the actuals are as of June 15th. So really there's only a couple more weeks left in the fiscal year at that point. The year-end projection, which tries to encompass everything, you know, like we'll keep everything open through July and even the first part of August to capture everything for the fiscal year. And then you'll see the difference at the end. So you'll see that in police, there seems to be a net surplus of just over $260,000, primarily due to staff vacancies. Bike patrol is a little bit over $15,000 for a net surplus just because last August and September, I think at that point we only had 2 patrol officers. Fire looks to be over budget. Fire and admin actually almost identically amount over budget for 61,000 and admin 61,000 as well. And so you'll see also the transfer to the reserve fund. I'm waiting to do that until some pieces come in just to make sure. You know, in past, we've done 2 different transfers, one for just the full amount that's the budget, and then whatever that was spent out of the capital account that it owes 715 because the capital account isn't a cash account, so the money doesn't actually come out of the account. So it's up to the board if you know, you want me to just do the difference or do one that is the actual 345,000 transfer just to show in the budget that's one transfer and then another journal entry for another transfer.
I think
to reconcile it.
I think make 2 journal entries, make that full transfer and then make the reconciliation, just so that we're very clear on how that worked.
So then, so anyway, you'll see then for the 715 fund, and I'm sorry, it didn't look like it did the supporting documents. Shoot, I must have just done that snap page. I'll send that out to the board. But then really the next pages showed in the fire, the admin, and the police budget where the overages are. I believe in the fire budget, the overages is mainly due to the overtime budget and all the corresponding benefits, the personnel benefits. And then with admin, I added a memo to explain the overages to the board. There were increases in areas that were not originally accounted for during last budget season. So to explain some of those overages. So in total, the 715 fund, you know, looks to have a net surplus, but if Chief Rassick keeps full staff, when you keep full staff, it's going to be very tight towards the end of the year. So it's just not only keeping within budget, but also just you know, to some decision making throughout the year. You know, we would really have to see what that impact is. So that's just the overview. So I just wanted to let everyone know that 717 once again will be a net surplus with this extra budget adjustment, so there shouldn't be any worry going to the end of the fiscal year from an audit standpoint. And that I think we've covered everything, but that's the status of all three funds. Any questions? And I'll send out that report. I'm sorry, when I hit to print, it must have just printed to PDF that first page. But I'll send out and post to the website the subsequent pages so you can see the breakdown of where those overages are.
And clearly, I mean, this is still a fluid number and we've got the projections, but it's realistically what you'll probably hold it open a month for additional bills to come in. So really we'll have the final number in this timeframe.
Yeah, and the auditors are already reaching out to get connected towards the end of August, early September to get going on the audit for that year too.
Okay.
Are we still waiting for the state to reimburse fire for the conflagration overtime?
We've received most of those reimbursements. I think there's just one when Chief went to the hurricane in North Carolina. We haven't received that reimbursement.
Yeah, you'll be waiting a while.
So yeah, so I know there's some overtime that's assigned for Chief Booth and Chief Bjorvik to go to that you see the expense, that's the overage. But you know, I can send information on how much that really is compared to the overage too.
Well, and realistically, his call up right now will hit this fiscal year. And so we won't see that for a while.
Right. So we'll see that in the revenue side, but on the expense side.
Yeah, that's kind of, it makes it difficult because it never goes back into the overtime budget.
Well, it obviously had been, but accounting best practices is not to do that. And so we've chosen to keep revenue, expenses and expenses. And then Chief Booth has a breakdown, if you'd like to see that, of how much that is. So you can see, you know, of that $60,000 overage, how much of that is really their overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So we're happy to support, provide that.
Is there a way, I guess we never really thought of this, is there a way long-term to actually break overtime down into two categories? There's an estimated overtime for call-outs, and then there's regular overtime for vacation, sick, other things like that are going on. Could we actually build those into two line items so we can track both separately?
We can do two line items, but it's also,
He's got in lunch. He's launching out the response. Heart problems. Desert Family Medicine. At 570-67, Beaver Drive. Cross streets are farther west of Grizzly Lane. Respond on those two.
but Heather's able to keep that track of that data pretty easy as well.
Okay.
So I could ask that the chief send out that information for both the overtime amounts as well as how much to date then is based on vacation, sick, whatever, or anything else.
Well, I mean, I don't purposely don't mess with this admin stuff too much, but like, you know, overall, he and I generated, we pulled like around 200,000 back, right? And a lot of that was like, so just for my knowledge and clarification, so like the truck, like the funds we get back for the vehicles and stuff, that was a bunch. Where does that end up?
So that's all in the revenues.
This goes back to.
No, it's got its own.
So yeah, we do have a revenue line that says when all that stuff comes back, it goes in. And we can, and that's what that's what I'm trying to figure out is when we look at that and we look at the overtime offset, how much are we covering there versus how much is actually just, you know, the internal overtime that we spend. It's useful to me to track both of those. Again, not trying to be prescriptive at this point, I just, you know, but one of the discussions that we had when we created this budget was how do we actually cut regular overtime? And the response kept coming back, well, if we cut overtime right now, we're cutting both of them. I think this is more just the response of, if it's you or Chief Bruce, or even if we're sending a crew out to a conflag, something like that, I want to track that as overtime, but I want to understand that that's reimbursable overtime that's getting offset in the revenue line versus how much are we just, having to deal with the internal vicissitudes, and are we appropriately, budgeting that?
Because also with the revenues, we are budgeting, for next year, I don't remember off the top of my head, but that we are gonna receive I don't know how much it was, $175,000 for conflict. So on that side, we're budgeting, okay, we're getting this much to then be able to say, okay, then you have that much more in expenses too. So it does offset each other, but in order to see how much that general overtime is compared to how much is just directly proportionate to the conflict reimbursement, I can email out that breakdown.
Okay.
I would think if, you're looking at like 60 over total, that, though I know the overtime budget's high, but I guarantee you that the chief and I pulled a bunch of overtime to that amount. So if we're only over 60, that's
Pretty decent.
yeah.
And it's good, but it's something that you can't, it's hard to budget for. You can budget it for it, but you can't rely on it.
Just about impossible to.
Also, almost impossible. Plus with it's coming back in, it's going into the general fund, so to speak. That's what we used to call it. Going into your general fund, and that's where you have to start. Just for the accounting practices.
So this is, to me, this is not, at this point, this is not, I want to change this. Because we had that discussion and it kind of fell apart about about 15 months ago. But what I'd rather see is let's observe the two categories and see what they are, and then determine as a board at that time whether there's some prescriptive changes that we want to do.
Right, because we really don't know how much it actually costs in overtime to staff a fire engine.
Right.
And that's what we need to know.
Yes.
But our budgeting process is basically we take the total amount of resources that we think we're going to get, including conflagration. And then we say, okay, 3 departments, this is how much we have to balance it. And that's where it was over. And we had to come and make some changes, with the captain position and reducing overtime. And so that's how we use, that's been the past budgeting practices. This is how much coming in, and to, not dig into any beginning net capital. This is how much that needs to go out. And so, we can refine that just so it's very trackable on how much that is. I'm just looking at the 30,000 foot view. And if police is fully staffed for that next year, it doesn't matter how much it goes over. We're going over and having to eat capital.
Yeah.
I think you just keep it as a side accounting note as you're tracking throughout the year, the revenue that we're generating through that process.
Yeah, and Heather's got most of that already with the reimbursement to see, okay, not only, did they pay for his salary, they paid for the overtime, they paid for those, all those pieces, and then seeing, okay, of that, how much is the total overtime budget to be like, okay, it's, staffing or whatever.
And this is, we've talked about it a little, we've talked about it philosophically, and we'll talk about it again when we start on the fiscal, or that would be 27 budget. But one of the suggestions that a couple of us have had is we have a pretty good approximation of how much of if you look at the 345, we have a pretty good approximation, especially now with the building being done, on how much of that goes to police, how much of that goes to fire, and how much of that goes to admin. And the police number always sticks out. If police and bike patrol, plus the portion of admin, no, not including portion of admin, police and bike patrol is in the range of about $1.50. Just as a for instance, don't hold me to that number, but it's in that range. Admin was like 18 cents, 20 cents, something, or was it 30, something in that range? But that's also like a lot of the common utility bills, insurance, other things like that. We might want to start shadow tracking police, fire, admin as separate budgets and hold them within, and have those departments hold within that sub range, just to see how well that tracks over time. Because if the district were to expand disproportionately at some point or another, that would give us a lot of information in terms of how we split the rates. So that's just a fun, keep your eyes open, but that's probably some budget guidance that we'll give for next year in terms of how to do that. And then it gives us just a lot more understanding on, when we're advocating, hey, I need this for police department, or I need this for fire department. Okay, does it fit within your designated range, or why would we change that range?
Right, and I also just want to clarify that. So this is all just, I'm primarily focused on expenses. And so if conflict comes in a ton more, if property taxes come in a ton more, if we get grants, that's great. That's gravy. But the auditors are looking at expenses. And so that's why that's always the focus. So I know it can feel like, hey, we're bringing in a ton of money and we're still looking like, we're going over budget. But that's where the budgeting process needs to be really assessed in that, thing every year, because that's what the auditors are focused on. So, unfortunately, it's not a give and take out of the same account, the way the accounting is set up. So unfortunately, even though, it looks like it's 60 over, but you brought in maybe 100,000 more than you thought, the auditors.
There is additional revenue sources outside of property tax.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can track as well. Okay, well, here's your portion of the property tax. Here's what you say you're gonna otherwise gain in revenue, either through contract.
Yeah. And then that's your budget to work with. But that's why the budgeting process is so important, to try to hopefully forecast that, because, as that number gets to that nexus, then we would have to be doing a budget adjustment to be eating into capital to cover any overages.
Right.
At the end of the year.
Okay, that was a little far afield, but I thought it was a worthwhile discussion.
Boring.
I started it. Any additional questions on the actuals? All right, let's take it to item 10. I will turn it over to Administrator Holliday, but this would be a motion to approve a 3% COLA for basically the non-represented employees. So I will turn it over to Mindy to take it away.
So historically, the district board has extended any COLA that was negotiated in the contracts. The police department did the police union, negotiated a 6-month extension that did include a 3% COLA that will go into effect July 1st. That's been part of the budgeting process. And just because it's been past practice that the board extends those COLAs to non-represented staff as well. We put that through the budgeting process, and so that's already accounted for in the approved budget. And this is just a list of the individuals that would impact, and if the board would like to approve that increase for those staff members.
So just to repeat that, the budget did approve an assumed 3% COLA for the non-represented staff. I believe the exception was because the police chief was relatively new. We didn't change that, and Chief Bruce did not put in 3% for himself in his.
As a cost savings for the fire department budget.
But otherwise, the ones here: deputy fire chief, administrator, executive assistants, police sergeants, community service officer, and bike patrol would be the ones affected.
Correct.
And it is within the budgets currently.
Yes, it's within the budget we approved to pass on to the county. It was within the budget that the budget committee approved and that the county approved yesterday.
Having said that, I'm gonna go back to my original statement years ago. I think we need to really examine this going forward. And I know Debbie brought this up, and I'm in agreement. It needs to be tied to the CPI, future reference. It really does. And I think that we need to adjust that. Any negotiations for police, fire, and I know the non-represented are not tied to that necessarily, but that could be something that is tied to it for the future reference. As long as it's based on the CPI, I think it's a better way to do business. And I think long-term, it is avoiding some of the pressures that is put on the board to make up money in other ways. And so that's my 2 cents for that going forward.
So, and my only comment, I'm sympathetic to the direction, because it is something that you can look on and you can say, we're just gonna set a policy and that's the policy that drives forward and then, and that makes it a lot easier. We have to decide what CPI, because there's national CPI, there's West Coast CPI, there's West Coast Metro CPI. For instance, the county CPI was it 6 or 2.6 or 2.8 is what
It's 2.8.
I think Kim told us the county CPI that they're using is 2.8.
So you can I can go online right now and find out every region, which includes Bend and the surrounding areas and give you what the CPI is. And that, whether that's CPIW, whether that's CPI, thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. My brain loves it. But yeah, you can find that out and it just, we just need to decide an agreement that best fits our situation.
I am good with that. I'm good with that as a potential policy moving forward.
And while I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I've seen in my previous lifetime where admin and non-representative folks were receiving less than what unionized people have. It has caused a lot of additional unionization.
I agree.
And it's caused bad morale. It's also caused people wanting to leave because they can find greener pastures elsewhere. So again, I don't disagree with your concept, but we have to be very careful on how we administer that so we aren't creating these big gaps
Right, but there is
in terms of pay.
But that's also part of a bigger budget discussion as we go into negotiations, and I don't want to step on negotiations that their raises need to be somehow tied in their negotiation process to the CPI. We just, like when I see 7% that was given, I'm like, what the hell? And now 3%, okay, I can live with that. But when you're talking 7, 8, 9% some years, that's out of sorts. And we can't sustain that.
Unless that's what the CPI is.
Unless that's what the CPI is. And, but then inflation has hit everything.
Yeah.
So we live with that, but we don't have to live with 7% versus 2.5%.
Yeah, we don't need to go revisit the past. We all know how much that.
We don't need to revisit the past, but that's
Yeah,
like, it sticks in my,
we can pull that knife out of the district's kidney later.
yes. And so, and I'd like to hear it discussed at the board level, see if we can come up with a policy that addresses both for their purposes and for the purposes of going forward in any type of contract negotiations. I don't know if we have an answer for that, but I'd like to try it.
It's, I want to make sure, and let's say for the record, I want to make sure that that is part of the early budget discussions for the next budget, that we start talking about where are we going with various cost raises and how do we do, I mean, the personnel is the main hit, but we can see, yeah, I'm a big guardrails fan, as everybody knows. You can set the guardrails to say, on one side it's CPI, on the other side it's any negotiated union space, and then the answer lies somewhere in the middle, potentially to one side or the other. And maybe that could, and maybe those two cross each other at some point or another based on where the negotiation's going. But it is good to have, it's good to have lanes rather than just saying, I'm gonna drive on the one number I have.
Well, and with the budgets, the way they are going forward, we're gonna have to, examine everything, turn over every rock and potential for cost savings and keeping in mind the equity needed for those non-represented individuals. I get that, and I don't have any problem with that. And we do need to address it, I agree with you.
I'm still playing with the 7-year projection. I lost it. I ran out of time on it for a while and it worked what we needed to for the budget, but I do want to revive it. One of the things that I actually want to do is start to model what are some of the increases that we do. That's already kind of in there, but I want to more clearly model vacancies, either planned or unplanned, so that we have that as a dial that we can turn. Totally different thing, and it ain't going to happen anytime soon. But maybe when I'm stuck in Canada next month, it'll give me something to do in the trailer.
Fight off mosquitoes.
Yeah. Thank you, good Molson in the process. Anyway, I will entertain any motion a board member would like to propose.
I'll make a motion to approve 3% COLA for deputy fire chief, administrator, executive assistants, police sergeants, community service officer, and bike patrol to be effective July 1st, 2025.
I'll second that.
All right, there is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will call for the vote. Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Ralston?
Yep.
Director Shoemaker?
Yes.
Director Hepburn?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. All right, item number 11, May 2025 unaudited financials. I will turn it over to Administrator Holliday.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The first page of the financials shows, and basically what I did is I just highlighted in the percent of budget if it's over where we are as far as 11 months out of the 12-month year. So this first page is revenue, so it's very good to be over budget on this page. And Chief Bjork, I'll show that the conflag brought in $150,000 over budget. So just wanted to note that that's where that is. Also, interest income has come in higher than budgeted. And then also higher year tax collections. We've also got quite a bit more this year than we assumed for previous year's tax collection.
That's kind of a surprising number.
Yeah,
How high?
yeah. Yeah, so that's good. So anyway, so that's where you'll see that revenue number for the conflag reimbursements. I believe it's the fourth one down. Then moving down in the expenditures. So hopefully these are getting into a format. I did it similar to last month, that is working for the board. And so you'll see then, I separated it out for police department. And so you'll see the salaries and the benefits. And so really the overall, they're definitely below budget as far as where they should be at this point due to the vacancies throughout the year. And then if you look at the overall materials and services for the police department, definitely below budget as a whole. Then to go to the fire department, then that's where you can see some of the overages. So for instance, the fire overtime, you can see the over budget amount. Right now it's just a little over 100,000. And so I'll send out that breakdown to see how much of that was the chiefs for being on the conflagration. And then usually if you're over with salaries, then the benefits don't fall far behind. So there's those pieces. The only one of note was in materials and services as a whole. The fire department, though, is way below budget as far as their materials and services for the year. And then bike patrol is next. And so percent of budget, they're doing great. Materials and services is a little over budget, but overall, because I believe we just had so many more than last year. So it just cost to get them up and going, but there were definitely savings and they're overall under budget for the year. Administration. You'll see that area. There is, as I talked about in the memo, one of the areas that the administration budget is over budget is because there are 2 executive assistants coming out of that budget. So while one was covering for police because there was a time frame that there wasn't anybody in that role, and then also training, both of those were coming out of this budget just because that's the way it was set up in the payroll system, and it just didn't get moved over to the police side. And then the other pieces that were over for materials and services, the reserve study, I noted in that memo, that wasn't a part of the original budget. I think I was assuming at the time it would go out of 717, so that's why that one's a little high. And then, the other ones to note, I think it's also just, the utilities are, we did our best guess while we were in the old building of what the smaller building was here, and so there just was some overages for the utilities. But overall, the admin budget for materials and services is far under budget for the year. And then
Electricity costs just to, turn the first floor and fire into an ice refrigerator. That's gotta hurt.
And then 716, the capital fund, you'll see fire equipment, all of that billing has come in, as well as, I believe, most of the auto billing for your new rig has come in. So I don't know if there's any other outstanding items for that you know of, Chief.
There's just the update stuff that was submitted, like that isn't in yet.
Okay.
They just completed that a couple days ago.
Okay, so there's about 7,000 there to work with for that. Hopefully that covers that amount, and then with police, there's still some dollars there that looks like maybe haven't come in, Chief. So if you could look into that just to make sure that we're on track for budget for those, that would be great. And then lastly is the 717 Public Safety Building Fund, and we've talked about that already, just where that's at and why we did the transfer from the operating funds, except we're in the. And then at the bottom, the last page, just doing a snapshot of the expense categories for each fund. So you could just see it as a quick snapshot as well. Any questions?
Yeah. Questions for Administrator Holliday on finances? If not, we need a motion to approve the May 2025 unaudited.
I'll make a motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? If not, I will call for the vote. Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Ralston? Yep. Director Shoemaker?
Yes.
Director Hepburn?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. We're doing for the unknowns that have been floating around, on the building and some of the other things, we estimated pretty well. And otherwise, other than one or two categories where that looks like it's over, but we've got some offsetting revenue for it. Obviously, as we saw in 715, we've done a good job. And then the thing just comes down to, as we get more and more optimistic on having fully staffed departments, we're just going to need to run just that little much tighter to make sure that next year is going to be equally good.
Yeah, because it is worth noting that right now on revenue, we look to be receiving about $386,000 more than we were anticipating. So I know the expenses always sound so bleak, but I mean, we definitely did very well when it comes to revenue and overall the district is sitting just a skosh higher than it was last year.
Okay. All right. Our favorite part of the meeting, Randy.
You just want me to be quick so we get out of here.
Actually, I just want to hear you talk about golf.
Oh, that's second item. First item is Chief Race that came in and do some self to the board, which is very nice of him to do. And yes, golf. But the summer resort golf policy, we're hoping to put it to bed this month.
Policy.
Well, the policy that owners not be able to play.
Or their fault.
Yeah.
I thought that's our way to.
Resorts policy, golf policy.
Okay.
So we're hoping.
So far, I've seen the both of you, very easily carrying around your golf bag, so it's apparently not affecting you that much.
It doesn't affect us, but it affects other people. We're hoping to put that one to sleep finally. Got our magistrate annual report, and we've gone to escalating fines, which is helping with people. They're finding out that it's cheaper to paint their house and keep paying the fine if we have escalating fines. So that's.
And I'll just say, I'm really glad that finally got decided, because that got bantered around for a while and it kept getting shot down.
But this works.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta give, if they don't take the candy, give them a hammer. We're having less, this is magistrate, but we have less tree cutting violations as well. Our aquatic manager resigned at the,
Oh,
yeah, the good news is, she got a better job in Bend. We have 14 applicants already. Place her. Got a reading for the some rules and regs, basically change a right to appeal to the magistrate for, so that's pretty nothing burger to you guys. As you guys all have seen, the school's out for summer and a lot more people are going to the Shark, and that's good news. The building next door is hoping to be done by early July now. There's a pathway task force that our police is involved in, and they had meetings, and there's going to be another presentation. There was a online forum for that, and we're going to be talking about that more this week and trying to figure out where we're going to go with that eventually. We're talking about proposed transfer fee. I don't know if you guys have heard that one, about a 0.5%. Our lawyer says it's legal. It would require a vote of the owners to approve that.
so this is a transfer fee when houses are sold?
Houses are sold.
Coming out of the sale.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a way to make some more money.
There's a small fee that's in there already.
That's for the inspection fee.
Yeah,
But no, there is a transfer fee.
$100.
Yeah, it's a.
That's a county, that's a county.
That's not for us.
we're talking for.
It's part of the internal paperwork
Yeah, that's a.
Yeah,
fee.
Yeah, yeah, but this would be
I just remember discussing that a few years back.
yeah. So they'll require them to vote, and we're gonna discuss that some more.
So if I sell my house, I pay you a fee?
Well, you wouldn't pay it. People who bought it didn't pay the fee.
There is a fee that gets included in for the recording and sale, closings,
Basically.
all the rest.
Yeah.
Fee.
Yep. As you probably all know, the tunnel that was between Circle 2 and by the village is done.
Yeah, Chief Bruce would like to thank you for getting it done before it got crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
I realize every tunnel is different, but it would be nice if they could figure out a way to speed that up.
Well, this one became a problem because they found stuff they didn't know they were gonna find.
If you recall, it was started twice.
I realize stuff happens, but
Yeah.
maybe a little more preliminary work beforehand, before you close off the road.
Right, until you start digging into the ground, you don't know what you're gonna find sometimes.
As we've learned on this building, there's stuff you
There's
never.
stuff that was built back in the sixties that weren't done.
Oh, no, I get that, but when you start closing off Abbott or Beaver Drive.
Yeah, I know, trust me, I understand the pain of people getting around.
Yeah.
It's making it hard for police for patrolling and it's more accidents and all those things too.
What is the plan next one? Do you know yet?
I don't remember what the next one is yet.
I thought it was, you know the next tunnel? I thought it was one out by like the bridge or something.
New River Road, this,
That was talking about Rivers Road.
other things involved with that one.
That's,
That might be next.
Yeah.
yeah,
We've gotten all the other stuff
yeah,
out of the way.
that hasn't been decided yet. Let's
It's
put
in
it that way.
wetlands and,
Yeah.
it's got the other issues.
Yeah. And lastly, we did, tree protection inspections for like people put up where they plant trees or protect them. There's 1,300 they inspected, 28% were out of compliance. Basically, it's people put protections around their trees and then never bother to take them down when the tree grows up and you have a 4-foot little fence around a tree that's 30 feet tall. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Anyways, that's it.
All right, additional questions for Owners Association? Is there any other business to come in front of this body? If there is none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Good. Director Kelly? Yes. Director Ralston? Yep. Director Shoemaker? Yes. Director Hepburn? Yes. Chair votes yes, motion passes. Under 2 hours. Oh,